World Insight. 30th anniversary of diplomatic ties between China and 5 Central Asian countries. Where are China's ties with its neighbors heading? Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello, I'm Tian Wei, and this is World Insight. The multifaceted cooperation between China and the Central Asian states continues this year. Diplomacy, infrastructure, trade, energy, security, and people-to-people exchanges are among the diverse fields that enrich both sides. On Tuesday, Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted a virtual summit marking 30th anniversary of the diplomatic ties between China and the 5 Central Asian states of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. President Xi said that the key to the successful cooperation is mutual respect and friendship. He also vowed to build a closer community with a shared future. The leaders of the 5 Central Asian countries said they look forward to attending the opening ceremony of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games next week. So, what can we learn from the relationship between China and the 5 Central Asian countries? Let's have the panelists join us. For more on the relationship between China and the 5 Central Asian countries, we are joined in Shanghai, Zhao Long, professor at the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies with the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. Good to see you, Mr. Zhao. Long time no see. Wonderful to have you. Meanwhile, in Beijing, I would love to welcome Mr. Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies. Good to see you, sir. Last but not least, in Washington, D.C., Surab Gupta, head of the Trade and Tech Program at the Institute for China-America Studies. Good to see you, sir, as well. Let me start by asking you, Mr. Zhao, since you've been doing research about China and Central Asian countries for long, how should we see the strategic relationship between the two sides? And meanwhile, the diversity and the differences among the 5 Central Asian nations, what does it make about the diverse relationship that China could have with these countries?
Well, I think China and Central Asian countries have made extraordinary achievements through the 30 years of its relationship. And we have established quite a new and unique model of cooperation. On one hand, China as the largest developing country. On the other hand, the 5 Central Asian countries as the largest group of transition economies. So I think in that relationship, the mutual trust play the key role, and which we are respecting each other's independent choice of development path, and mutually supporting each other on the core interest. But as you said, there's differences, and also the in the interest in the strategies. But we, as China, as the outsider of the Central Asian region, so we are respecting the collective identity of Central Asian countries. That's why we have established so-called a mechanism of China plus Central Asia, the C5 plus China.
Right.
So this kind of mechanism provides a good environment for our pragmatic cooperation, and serves as the good example that China respects all this strategic autonomy of Central Asian countries.
Mr. Rong, at the same time, we do see the 5 Central Asian countries are also members of the CSTO, which of course has been very much involved by Russia. So how do we see China and Russia different approaches to the Central Asian countries, while China and Russia also have this strategic partnership, which both sides have been emphasizing quite much recently?
Well, indeed, I think China and Russia has a very close relationship, in terms of strategic coordination and cooperation. And both China and Russia certainly have a very strong and profound relationship with the 5 Central Asian states because of history, because of the geographic proximity, and as we have seen in the past 30 years, I think despite the differences of different sort of priorities and the different interest in terms of or emphasis in terms of developing the relationship with the five Central Asian states, we have seen that the overall at the bilateral level, China and Russia has been maintained a very close collaboration, and more importantly, are working together to promote the stability and the development of Central Asia as a whole by giving full play their own respective advantages. And we have seen what happened in the past. We have seen in recently when the Kazakhstan had that turmoil and the problems. And I always see there will be more coming between China and Russia in terms of strengthening collaboration and working together to promote the peace and stability and the development in the region.
Of course, things are evolving very fast, but for the moment, of course, it's the 2020 Beijing Winter Olympic Games. Mr. Gupta, the 5 Central Asian countries, they have their own advantages in their winter sports. As you may know, many of their countries are covered by snow during the winter time. So this time, all of them want to contribute together with China and many others to the Olympic movement.
I think it's a great thing that the Olympics are happening in Beijing, and the Central Asian countries obviously have potential and skills to do well at the Winter Olympics. I think it goes to the larger issue of that the Olympic spirit needs to be preserved, and the SCO countries and China and the Central Asian countries are entering and enjoying the Olympics in that Olympic spirit. We cannot say that about all the other countries, especially with the diplomatic boycotts that some of them are trying to enforce. But at least it's a harbinger of a good wind in China-Central Asia relations that the Central Asians are going to be participating in numbers. Hopefully there won't be any Omicron-related issues, and this will be a successful Olympics, and that everybody will come away happy with how the Olympics has been conducted and how the results have been.
China is busy preparing, and all the final preparations seem to be in place. Already the IOC president in Beijing meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Chinese President Xi Jinping suggested that China has been determined and now is fulfilling its obligation to be the host of the 2022 Winter Olympic Games. Having said that, though, let me move on by asking you, Mr. Zhao, further about China and Central Asian countries. Now, we see organizations like CSTO. We also see organizations like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which of course involve China, Russia, Central Asian countries, and some of the others. So how do you see, multilaterally and bilaterally, China has been carefully choosing its approaches to different Central Asian countries individually and also collectively?
Well, I think indeed there's a many multilateral platform in Central Asia also already being established. And I think the very priority one for China is, of course, is no doubt is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it was noting that China has never introduced such an exclusive Central Asia strategy like United States or EU. I think China advocates more inclusive initiative and emphasize on the alignment with the development strategies of Central Asian countries, also the complementary the approach and synergies with other regional initiatives and institutions, including the CSTO and other strategies from Western countries. So I think, of course, for China, it's Central Asian countries are not only the important pragmatic partners, but also the frontier of maintaining the security and stability in the western part of China, the core actors in combating the three evil forces. So that's why I think China, the future topic or agenda for China is how to promote a successful political and economic transformation of Central Asian countries through mutually beneficial and win-win economic and trade cooperation to maintaining the regional security through comprehensive development. I think this will be
what kind
an
of
important
comprehensive
aspect.
development, Mr. Zhao, are you referring to?
I think mostly it will be including into the framework of Belt and Road Initiative, which number one topic will be the interconnectivity. So currently, of course, we are improving so-called hard connectivities, like the maintaining the smooth operation of roads, railways, and pipelines. And I think in the future, we should more focus on the soft connectivities, like the facilitate more efficient custom clearance, improve cross-border logistics service, and open more green channels, and even establish more the mechanism for the fast exchange of the personnel and cargoes. These are very promising, I think, the aspects for our cooperation in the future.
Mr. Gupta, as you may know, right now there are quite a number of hardware infrastructure, as Mr. Zhao just earlier suggested, going on between China and the Central Asian countries. But at the same time, we see there's a huge momentum. For example, from the 5 presidents of the Central Asian countries that are now in China already for the 2022 Winter Olympic Games opening ceremony, they say they would suggest that the borders between China and these 5 countries, not just the borders, geographical borders, but rather a link of trade and exchanges. Now, it seems there's quite positive responses from these countries about developing further relations with China despite of the geopolitical changes and evolving in the world and in the region. Mr. Gupta, how would you understand that?
The way I'd understand it is that when we talk in terms of the Belt and Road, we typically talk in terms of hard infrastructure and hard connectivity, but connectivity can also happen at the digital end. You know, there's so much dynamic innovation in China in 4th industrial revolution related technologies. And it's not just for Central Asia, but for much of the emerging world, this is very new but something that is worthy of embrace, because this is shifting the way of how we live and work in our everyday lives. China has already made the transition. Of course, many of the developed countries have also are also making that transition, but this transition is a little bit slower in emerging economies, in middle income economies, and those which are not at the cutting edge of digitalization. And it is in these areas that China is very, very well placed to take its models of economic development and economic innovation to places like Central Asian countries. And I think it's in those respects, not just with regard to resources trade or just plain hard connectivity, but also soft connectivity and digital connectivity, which will really take many of the Central Asian countries to the next level, considering the fact that they do have many domestic challenges at home.
Mr. Rong, another front, I'm sure all of you would agree with me, is how to combat the pandemic, COVID-19 with Omicron. It is such an imminent threat for all of us once again. Mr. Rong, China has been and will continue to commit to provide both the vaccines and also special treatment pills against the pandemic to the 5 Central Asian countries. Now, to what extent do you see these 5 countries can, through cooperation with China, build up its immunity, quote unquote, against the pandemic, and also the ways of dealing with the pandemic, since China has been having and maintaining quite a unique approach?
Well, I would like to echo the 2 previous speakers' views about how to strengthen the collaboration and connectivity between China and the Central Asian states. That's exactly, I think, President Xi has proposed in his speech, the 5 proposals, and two of them actually relate to that. With regard to your question, it is again exactly, I think, one of the priority areas and issues President Xi has mentioned, that in addition, apart from the pledge by the Chinese side by President Xi to support the Central Asian states' fight against COVID-19 by contributing 50 million sort of vaccines to Central Asian states. They are also proposing to working together to use traditional medicines to build up a kind of health sort of a shield to work together to improve the public health sort of facilities and to ensure that the COVID-19, the disruption caused by that will not sort of interfere the collaboration and the cooperation. Rather, it will strengthen as an opportunity to strengthen the existing good neighborliness, the cooperation, and the improvement of the capabilities and the exchange of experience between the two sides.
All right. Rongying, Surab Gupta, Zhao Long, stay with me. We're going to come back to our discussion after this break. This is World Insight. Stay with us. We'll continue our discussion on China-Central Asia ties right after the break. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. We are discussing China-Central Asian economies and political ties. Now let's take a detailed look at how cooperation between China and the 5 Central Asian countries has developed over the past 30 years. Data from China's Ministry of Commerce shows a trade volume between China and the 5 Central Asian countries increasing more than 100 times to around $50 billion in the past 30 years. China's direct investment in the region has exceeded $14 billion. The Belt and Road Initiative has contributed to many cooperation projects covering areas like electricity, finance, medical services, transportation, agriculture. Security cooperation has also grown. China and the Central Asian nations have worked together to safeguard regional peace and stability by fighting the 3 evils, namely terrorism, separatism, and religious extremism. They have also carried out law enforcement against the transnational organized crime. And they have expanded the regional cooperation in accelerating economic recovery and improved people-to-people exchanges despite the challenges of the pandemic. So joining us to continue the discussion on China and Central Asia ties, Zhao Long from the city of Shanghai, Rongying in the city of Beijing, and Surab Gupta in Washington, D.C. It's always wonderful to have everyone joining from different parts of the world, given the challenges that we have is to see each other in person. But I can see you very clearly right now, and certainly your ideas as well. Let's continue about the economic ties. Now, raw materials, 5 Central Asian countries, they have their own advantages, different perspective. Mr. Zhao, earlier, all of you have been mentioned that the relationship, economic ties should be upgraded between China and the 5 Central Asian nations. I know China has also proposed the trade fair between China and 5 Central Asian nations. Now, which area, what kind of upgrading are we thinking about?
Well, I think for the past 30 years, the energy and agriculture exchange and cooperation were main contribution to our bilateral or multilateral trade. But in the future, I think how to strengthen not just the quality of our trade, but also to improve not just the quantity, but also improve the quality of our economic and trade relations is very important. And especially, I think China is trying to help the Central Asian countries to jointly meet the new round of technological and industrial revolution. So from that point, I think not just to expand our direct investment in the future. I think there's many other areas that we can cooperate. For example, the digital economy, for example, e-commerce. When the Alibaba and other companies are actively operating in the countries like Kazakhstan and others, the big data, the cloud computing, and also the green economy also will be, I think, the very promising area for us to cooperate and should be the key to the future collaborative agenda setting between China and the Central Asian countries.
Mr. Gupta, of course, economic cooperation, trade cooperation, the most important thing is stability. Now, we have seen over the past few weeks, Kazakhstan, for example, have been having some bumps along the road. Now things are calming down. But to what extent do you see that the 5 Central Asian nations political stability can be remained, and to what extent do you see, from your perspective in Washington, China is playing its role of bringing more momentum for economic development and therefore political stability in those 5 countries?
You know, at the end of the day, political stability in each country is for each country themselves to figure it out. It is not for outsiders to tell them how they need to govern their own affairs. The 5 Central Asian countries have made tremendous progress economically, perhaps not as much politically, and we saw that in Kazakhstan because Kazakhstan is very resource rich, yet a lot of the wealth is concentrated within small families or within small circles, and it's not as well distributed beyond. And these create tensions which erupt from time to time. But at the end of the day, it is for those countries to get the host countries to get their governance metrics right and carry on. Where China comes in the process is to allow and help these countries in terms of diversifying away from resources purely, because we are entering an era when you can't just depend on hydrocarbons. You do need to depend on renewables, and perhaps these countries have a lot of critical mineral resources, which could be then go into what is like, say, the critical batteries supply chain, which runs through China. And so they then themselves become new players in new industries. But also through digital innovation, it opens the opportunity for a lot of individual citizens to be much more participative in their own economic development. And this is an area where China can really play a considerable role. So at the end of the day, it is for host governments to maintain political stability the way they choose to, and hopefully in a kind of a pluralized manner and in an equal and distributed manner. But China can really create sources of economic growth and development, which helps these countries consolidate their political and economic development, and that's where I feel China comes in an important role in Central Asia.
We have been hearing from the Chinese government, the Chinese president suggesting during the meeting with the 5 Central Asian presidents that China will contribute to the 5 countries' foreign aid, about 500 million yuan to 5 of them, and also will also create opportunities for young people from the 5 Central Asian countries to come to China to study and to also do their internship. A lot of things are going on there. But Mr. Rong, there's one thing certainly very critical to China, that is the stability along the border, not to let the 3 extremism that have been mentioned earlier to cross the border, or shall we say to avoid the danger of that. Xinjiang has been quite an issue recently in international news. So Mr. Rong, how does China look at the anti-terrorism and also the fight against extremism with its relationship with these 5 Central Asian countries?
Yeah, security issues has always been a very important area for cooperation between China and the Central Asian state. As a matter of fact, I think the relationship has been able to reach to a higher level only because of the complete settlement of boundary issues. And based on that, and because of the political trust arising from that, I think China and the Central Asian state will be able to move ahead with cooperation on the non-traditional security issues, the fight on the three evils and other transboundary security threat. And I think along this line, we have seen many agreements have been signed, both at the bilateral level and also at the multilateral level in terms of regional organization like SCO. We have also seen many concrete sort of steps. For example, the joint military exercises at the bilateral and multilateral level. We have seen collaboration, close collaboration between the two sides on counterterrorism, intelligence and sharing, and joint patrol, and on and on. I think that we have, since China and Central Asian state has such a strong and deep political trust, has such a strong and solid basis, we're going to continue to see, I think, collaboration along the line, as these are the same challenges, same threats facing China and the Central Asian state.
Mr. Zhao, we only have 30 seconds left. Anything to add?
Well, I think there's another important topic for us in the security area is how to prevent the so-called spillover effect of Afghanistan. So after the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan, so there's a joint statement made by China and Central Asian countries in last year. I think in the near future, we should support Afghanistan peaceful reconstruction and call on responsible and orderly restore the order in the Afghanistan and helping them to reconstruction their own home. That will be one of the important security aspect for our cooperation.
I see. Zhao Long, Rong Ying, Surab Gupta. Gentlemen, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us.